G'day, how's it going? A little bit sick here, but just got some free time to work on the JZX. So yeah, today's job will be putting in a new boost gauge because my old one's a fake Defi and I don't trust it, especially that it doesn't sit on zero when the car's just idling. Actually, no, not idling. It doesn't sit on zero when the car's turned off. It reads like 2 psi or something, or actually 0.2 bar. So it could be out by quite a bit. So yeah, I'm just going to rip the old one out and then wire in my new gauge. So I've got here, I've already taken just the faceplate out, or the actual unit. Yeah, so that's the fake Defi. Looks pretty cheap quality. And I bought myself an AEM. So I'm not a big fan of the digital ones. I like the old school analog look, but being that I want a wideband gauge later, and AEM make the best wideband, and it is a digital gauge, I thought I would just get matching boost gauge in digital. And I've kept it in bar instead of PSI, so it comes in PSI, and then all you do is just undo these screws on the back and flip the faceplate around, and then it gives you bar. So you've got both options there, so that's really handy. So pretty much taken the dash apart. I've got wiring everywhere. This is a mess from previous owners and whatnot. The old gauge sat here on this mount. I've got a body and stuff to put the gauge in. It kind of doesn't really work, but I'll make it work. So seeing that I already have wires and that here for the old gauge, I'm just going to tape the new wires to these and then just pull them through. So then they go into the exact same spot, so I don't have to worry about like feeding it all through the dash manually. It'll just pull through. Alrighty, we're all taped up. I believe the other wire is in here somewhere. That's getting caught. Put that there. And that did not work. That actually snapped the the old sensor off. Or no, he actually had a connection here. Okay, so halfway under the dash he had an extension of some sort, and that actually let go. So that did not work. But it's alright, I can just join to this end here and pull through the rest of the dash. Yeah, and the reason why we're running it across the whole dash is because the grommet that goes through the firewall that's easiest to access is on the passenger side, so I'll do the same as what the previous owner did and just run the cable through there. Whether I bring the sensor through and the cable through the firewall, the sensor head's quite big, or the plug for it anyway, which is going to be a pain to get through the actual grommet. So I'm thinking I might run the boost rubber line just through a little bit and have the sensor just under the dash. It might be a bit easier and keep things tidier. Save mucking around and putting a big hole through the grommet, which I would prefer to keep waterproof. So there's the wire the previous owner ran. Like, obviously it wasn't tucked away very good, but I should be able to just pull on this, and hopefully it looks like it's getting a bit tight, so I might go around and check the other side and let it come through. And easy as that, it's through. This is sort of the length I've got. It doesn't go much longer. So rather than forcing it through the plug in the wall, I will just this is the old setup of boost line for the gauge. So they just teed off of whatever was here and run a loop up to here. There's a little sensor here for the old type, and then the wires run through the plug in the firewall here. So I'm thinking I've got newer stuff for this. I'll just run that maybe through there if I can do it. I know there's problems with it maybe rubbing and getting boost leaks, but my gauge will read 0 or a lot less if that happens, so I'll be able to get onto it nice and early. I hate buying second-hand like modified cars. You get just crap like this. These were going to the battery. That's for the sensor. I'm not sure why there was so many connections here. I'm no auto electrician, but I believe that he ran out of room for his wires coming into the gauge, and possibly he could have wired this up, maybe because it was connected to the battery for constant power, for memory for the gauge, so it remembers like your peak settings and stuff. Not sure, but I believe I can delete it because that is just the wire for the old gauge, and all this is from it. So I don't think I need it. So I'm going to take it out and see what happens. AEM's applying the goods with really thick, nice rubber vacuum line compared to this really thin, cheap stuff that was in the car. So I'll replace all that, then put it through the firewall with this good stuff. So again, I've just taped the vacuum line to this old electrical cable. I actually put the cable inside of the vacuum line, it actually fit quite nice. And I'll just pull that through and hopefully it comes nice and easy and doesn't snap off for me. Saves me a lot of hassle getting my hand down in there and trying to get it through all the holes. Yeah, it's a little tight. So my plan didn't work. It was a bit too tight in there. So at the moment, I've just shoved a screwdriver through where the old one went, and it pops out under the dash. So I'll probably just tape my hose to that screwdriver and hopefully pop it through. Righty, I've tried many things, screwdrivers, etc., pushing it through the firewall. I can get the screwdriver through, but I just can't get this rubber vacuum line through. So this time I've got some thin wire, taped it up really good and twisted it around and stuff, and hopefully it's slippery enough to get through. I might even lubricate this slightly with some Vaseline or something, just because I think it's gripping up on the rubber. So yeah, one of those tough spots. It's a really hard one, probably the worst one I've ever had to feed through a firewall before. So yeah, you get that on the big jobs. Look at that, eh? A little bit of lube and that's all it took. So yeah, lube is your best friend when trying to go through holes. So I have a bit of a break. I thought I'd show you some more wiring jobs I've done. This is my 2002 Nissan Patrol 4.2 litre turbo. Yeah, I've had it for a few years and spent a lot of money on its suspension and all that, but I can do another walk around of this another day. So I thought I'd show you all my other wiring jobs. So I'm not exactly a beginner, but I wouldn't say I'm the best person to ask for this stuff. But I've wired in a roof mount UHF in my four-wheel drive. Yeah, I've got this USB port I've put in. I've hardwired dash cams in. It's just flopping around at the moment. And then I've also put in gauges in this car. So we've got all these. We've got boost, exhaust temp and water temp, because the factory water temp in these Nissan Patrols isn't the greatest. And I've also got a dual voltmeter down here because I've got two batteries. Get it out of gear before I start it. She starts up. Yeah, so the volt gauge works, reading both batteries. The other one hasn't engaged yet because, yeah, it's just got an isolator on it, but I have put this switch in here too, and you'll see it engage in now. So it links the batteries together and then turn it off and it unlocks. All my gauges work, they do light up with my lights. I usually prefer them blue, but the battery's been changed recently. So yeah, I've wired all them in. I've put them in this orientation because I didn't want to buy one of those triple pod things on the A-pillar. But nah, see, I've done a fair bit of work before on these cars and doing things through firewalls and all that. You can see the exhaust temp coming up now, so they all work. Obviously water and boost won't really work because I'm just sitting here, but I can tell you that they definitely do work. I've also got my trusty Rodeo Ute, which was a bit of a purchase after I sold my last V8. This was to get me to and from work cheaply and efficiently, and definitely does that job even though she's so old. So yeah, I've also wired up this light bar, which was the old one off my four-wheel drive. Yeah, just because I travel up and down a country highway to and from work. Too much in here, but the best thing about this Ute is it's got a tilt tray. So that is very handy, and I don't want to sell it because of that reason. I only paid $1,500 for this Ute, and alone that tilt tray is probably worth $2,000. Engine bay they give you in this kit is nice and small, whereas the barb on the sensor is quite large, so the rubber hose doesn't really want to fit over this. They're size for size, so I'm just using the good old hot water to expand the rubber, and I've put some Vaso on this, so hopefully she slides on once it's all softened up. Alrighty, I've connected up the sensor. I didn't get this on as far as I would have liked. I've got it on like 2 barbs with a cable tie, so I can't actually pull it off. Like, it's really, really tight, so I can't see it leaking air or blowing itself off. I've tightened this up. just cable tie this sensor under the dash now, nice and neat, and then plug in the sensor I've run through here into that, and that'll be my connection done. And then just connect it up under the hood into the other boost line that was there, and then the gauge will pretty much work once I give it some power. Another thing I didn't really film is me wiring it under the dash here. It's pretty simple. This gauge only requires one 12-volt power switched obviously to the ignition, and then it just needs a ground, which was just under here with multiple other grounds. So it's pretty easy to wire up that gauge. All I did was just use one of the power sources from the last gauge. He had 3 different power sources, which was, one was switched 12 volt to accessories, there was constant power, and then there was a light circuit. So when the old gauge, your lights come on, it would change colour and dim down a little bit. But I didn't need that, and I didn't need constant power because the gauge would stay on the whole time. So yeah, just used a multimeter and found switched 12 volt. Sweet, it's in. I just use my old mount for now. Eventually I want to get maybe a multiple pot up the A-pillar. I do want it in this car. Yeah, but this old holder's not exactly that great. It must be cheap Chinese eBay stuff. But anyway, I should have wired it up correctly, and it should turn on for me. So we'll just see what it does. Look at that. Now, car's in neutral. See what happens when we start it. Oh, okay, that's not good. The negative on the battery was loose, so that'll do it. So we should start now. Car's revving extremely high, don't know why. Alrighty, the TPS was out a little bit. Since I disconnected the battery, it must have reset everything and was a bit confused, but we are now reading negative 16. So we've got vacuum there, and if I just slightly apply the throttle, yeah, it looks pretty sick. I like that, that's sick. Job done. I just got to tidy up the sensor under here, cable tied away, and make sure this car's idling good, which I've got a vacuum hose to replace in the engine bay next because I got a vacuum leak, so that's the next job. But that one's nice and simple, and time to enjoy this new gauge. So yeah, I've got to change this to obviously bar because at the moment it's reading in PSI. So I've got to work out how to change the settings on this. The gauge in, it's set to bar now, so it reads a lot better for me. Another little mod for the day was changing the bottom driving lights to yellow, just like the Japanese style. I always see their pictures and that they run yellow down the bottom, so I thought I'd do the same. Even my high beams are yellow, but it's not like I drive with them on that often, only when I'm driving down the highway at night very late, but yeah, looks good. So another few issues I've got, well, things that could be causing me issues to my low and high idles, is this vacuum line here. It was leaking on this side, but yeah, this plug into the cylinder head is all perished, and the last owner just had the plastic sort of grommet thing rather than wedged in there, nice sealed. Yeah, he just had it like resting on the actual plug, and it was just sort of sitting there and sucking in air, and I ended up putting silicone all around it just to seal it up, but I still don't think it's 100% sealed. This end still leaks. The hose is kinked at odd angles. It doesn't really seem right. So I brought myself a factory replacement. Oop. There it goes down the engine bay. But so yeah, it was like $30 or something. So yeah, it's got the new little rubber grommet for the head, and the little plastic thing that wedges in it and seals it up. So I'm hoping I can just dig that one out without making any mess and it falling into the head, because I'm not really keen on taking the tappet cover off at the moment. So hopefully it all goes well. And just like that, it's out. So yeah, this was like all snapped and perished, the rubber. The actual sort of nozzle was fine, but yeah, just like literally just didn't even have to pull on this, it just fell out. So there's definitely no good seal there. Yeah, so Cleaned up the old one. There was no real silicone stuck to it because it's all oily and the silicone didn't want to stick to it anyway. So definitely didn't have a good seal there. This fitting over here looks good. So I'll connect up all the new one. I also noticed that these like nozzles are actually check valves. So this one doesn't actually check, so it bypasses in both direction. This one actually checks properly, obviously, and I believe it allows air to be sucked in as vacuum into the intake, and then under positive pressure it'll block off and stop any pressure going into the head. So I was possibly sending boost into my head, which probably isn't that good, and probably why I had a couple oil leaks out of some seals and stuff. Also, here's all the crap. Oh, besides that is all the wiring and mess that was in under the hood and through the firewall. I have no idea what this was. It was like he also got 12 volt power from the battery to the gauge. I think possibly this thing required voltage. I don't know why, because my new one doesn't, but I got to remove all that out of the car, so that's heaps better. Just going to take it for a quick drive just to make sure it all works and all the lines stay on. But yeah, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I do all sorts of other stuff and mods and everything on my JZX. I'll probably do videos on my 4B and when I go away four-wheel driving as well. So if you're into Nissan Patrols and four-wheel drives and all that kind of stuff, yeah, just give us a follow.